Welcome to our discussion on the water line. My name is John Scruton. I am the town manager here in Plaistow. I have a group with me. On my far left is T. Richard Latham, known as Dick Latham. He is a former fire chief. He has been involved with working in some of the planning that's gone into the water line. To my immediate left is Don Sargent. He is the water superintendent and has been involved in the water line for many years. To my immediate right is John Sherman, who is a selectman. He sits on the budget committee and was involved with the capital improvements plan in which we worked on this water line, the presentation, and the warrant article that will be coming before the voters. He was also on the budget committee that approved the request for the funds that are going before the voters, or recommended is the correct word instead of approved. And to my far right is John McArdle, the fire chief, who depends upon the water from the fire suppression system in the commercial zone. I'm going to ask if Dick would begin by telling us a little about the history of our fire suppression line.
Certainly, John. Actually, the inception of the line was approximately the time that Process Engineering moved into town. They required to have a sizable volume of water so that they could hydrostatically test their tanks that they manufactured. Since that time, the Westville Homes moved in, and the line was extended down into the Westville Homes, which is located next to the railroad tracks in the Westville section of town. At the approximately the same time, the water tower was placed in operation. There was also what I call a swimming pool, which was right adjacent to the pump house. And the pump house had a 1,500 gallon per minute diesel pump. Sometime later, after the water line was connected to Westville Road, it was extended out to Main Street, and from Main Street down to Chadwick Avenue to cover the Keyser Manufacturing Company. Many of you people will probably remember that Keyser Manufacturing experienced two very dramatic and devastating fires in their company. So they required a sprinkler system, and the line was extended down for that purpose. Subsequent to that time, it's been extended to the current location that is located, and that extension was done based on the needs of the commercial industrial movement into the town.
Don, I was wondering if you could tell us some about where the current water lines go, what the system is composed of, how the system works.
Yes, up on the map we have the Maple Ave pump house, which is where we have the 1 million gallon reservoir. And inside that pump house we have a 200 horse electric pump. Also, we have a Cummins diesel that is, in case we lose our electric, we have the Cummins diesel will kick in. And then we have a jockey pump in there that maintains the pressure in the total line, the whole system, which is roughly 3.6 miles long. It goes from the pump house out to Kingston Road, and that's known as Arbor Way, and going back to the pump house, we go down Main Street, Maple Ave. We come down and come right down Main Street down to Chadwick, which is the end of the present line, down to the end there. And back at the railroad tracks, it follows the railroad tracks along, goes right by Process Engineering. The water tower that is there, everybody knows that. That was the original part of the water line. And then it goes down, comes out onto 125, crosses 125, down into Westville Homes, which is now changed hands. Then we go down 125, and we tie in with all the shopping centers, Coles, the Moulis's, which we just put online, all the way up to Shaw's at the Haverhill line up there. There's roughly 3.6 miles of pipe in the ground right now, and we have 47 hydrants in the town. A lot of them are right around the main shopping centers and so forth for fire protection and its fire suppressant system.
Where it is a fire suppression system, I'm going to ask if Chief McArdle can talk to us a little about why it is so important that the system functions and why we expand the system, why we need the system that we currently have.
Certainly, John. There are many codes and standards that have been written relative to fire suppression. Plaistow is fortunate to have a system that we have right now, such that it covers the center of town, some historic buildings, Town Hall, Pollard School, as well as it's enhanced the commercial development along Route 125. It gives us the opportunity to provide to those people who look to come into town a viable system. As Don Sargent mentioned, we have the diesel pump as well as a backup electric pump to keep the system up and running. What do sprinklers, what do hydrants do to service the town? It gives us a reliable source of water 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, knowing that we've got at least 1 million gallons of water at the reservoir in Maple Ave. That allows for reduced insurance rates. It allows for a response, fire response, before we even get there. When you talk about a sprinkled building, a lot of times they're referred to as the little firefighters in the ceiling, and that did help us with a fire last fall at the Big Lots store, where there was a fire within the building, and the sprinklers discharged and held the fire in check until we got there. We were able to turn the system off, so further damage didn't occur. But that's what sprinklers do for us. If you have a sprinkler system or a hydrant nearby your residence or your business, it's going to reduce your insurance rates. That's something that is routinely evaluated by an organization called ISO. They come through the town and they look at the fire department, they look at the water department, they look to see exactly where the water goes, the extent of the system, and the ability of the system to provide the water that we say it can. We recently underwent that evaluation in July, and happy to say we are at what's called a 4 and a 9. It's a split rate because our water system is only so far extended along 125 into the center of town. A 4 rating is very good for a town our size and of our resources. 9 is typical for anything outside of a water line, outside of a pressurized water system. Don mentioned we have approximately 47 hydrants through the town. They're critically located at the Main Street, stops at Keys of Manufacturing. As Dick Latham, indicated, the line we have now is pretty much put in place to foster commercial development, industry in the town. And that's where we are right now, along 125 down to Shaw's, and it stops now at basically the old Goodrow station. What will happen if we're able to expand the system? It's going to give the economic push, if you will, for development along 125 as you go north towards Kingston. Why is it important? As we stand right now, anything outside of the hydrant districts, as we refer to them, we have to carry that water with us. We have 2 tank trucks that can combine carry approximately 5,000 gallons of water, as well as the water we have in our pumpers, which is another approximate 1,000 apiece. I was just speaking with Chief Baker from Newton today, and his biggest concern is that if he gets a significant fire in any of his houses or business in town, is having availability of water. And every one of the towns around here has that same concern. If we've got a confirmed structure fire, we are going to immediately call for additional water from surrounding towns.
You mentioned that the tankers could hold, 5,000 gallons, I think it was, apiece? So that
Combined, 2,500 each.
So if they made a trip from wherever they could obtain water out to the house, they could get 10,000 gallons there. And if you're on the fire suppression system, that gives you water quite rapidly. I mean, you just hook on and you just start using it, and you would probably get those 10,000 gallons rather quickly over the hydrant system.
Absolutely. What we would look to do outside of the hydrant district would be to establish a water tanker shuttle. But the first thing you have to do is secure a reliable water source. That may be a dry hydrant, a pond, or it may be on the hydrant system itself. Preferably we'd go to the hydrant because that water is going to be readily available, it's going to be pressurized, and it's going to be at a rapid rate. And from then you truck it from the hydrant or the water source to the fire, where again you have to set up discharge that water appropriately to the engines and to the firefighters that need it.
So expanding these water lines is going to increase the ability of the town to protect residents all over the town, not just along the water line. Those along the water line should experience savings in their insurance rates because there'll be a much better rating, the ISO 4 instead of the 9, and it will give you cleaner water for when you do have to transport. And with the drought that's going on, I imagine some of your water holes that you have to rely on out in the districts outside of the line probably are less reliable than they are now.
That's true. One of the things along the same lines of what we're talking about with reliable water, recently I made a recommendation to the planning board. When we get to the outer lying areas of the town, we're seeing increased development residentially as well as some commercial. And I'm just not confident with the water, nature providing the water that we're going to need to protect those residents and occupancies. That I've recommended that they require cisterns to be installed in the ground to give us a reliable source of water in those areas.
Thank you. Now, one thing you mentioned was the economic development benefit that will come along 125 from expanding the water line. I know this was an issue that we discussed at the CIP, and I was wondering if, John Sherman, if you could share with us some of the benefits that we anticipate in terms of economic development by expanding the water line.
Yes, I'd be glad to. The infrastructure that we have controls the kind of economic development that we can get along Route 125. As you saw on the map earlier, the existing water line goes up 125 but stops at approximately Dunkin' Donuts or East Road area. And it's pretty obvious that the kinds of businesses that are on 125 where there is an existing water line, large retail stores, there are a couple of manufacturing businesses, and those are the kinds of entities that generate tax money and jobs for the town. Once you get above that area on Route 125, the water line isn't there, and you can see different kinds of entities, different kinds of businesses. There are some empty lots, there are small businesses, there are used car lots, the kinds of businesses that don't require a lot of water. Businesses like Walmart, the Walmart Plaza generates $250,000 worth of tax revenue to the town, and the Shaw's Plaza, I believe, it's around $50,000. If we were able to develop the water line up 125, I think we would be able to attract the kind of economic development that would help the town, both in terms of tax revenue and in providing jobs. A little bit later, we'll see a map where it'll be easier to see the areas that we're talking about. That'll be a little bit later on in the presentation. But it's obvious that increasing the water line coverage that we have along 125, we feel will attract businesses to town that'll help our tax base and also provide jobs to residents of the town.
Okay. Yeah, jobs, protection, those are both powerful arguments for passing the water line. Now, as everyone knows, we're now officially in a drought. It's been 8 months in which we've had below average precipitation. We've also had some underground pollution in various parts of town in which the states had to come in and put in treatment for individual homes because of the underground pollution. One of the questions that has arisen is there any possibility that somewhere in the future this system can be made into a drinkable water supply for residences? Now, no decision has been made in that direction. However, I would like if Dick could comment about what would need to be done if at some point in the future we had all this pipe in the ground and we wanted to change it to a drinking water system.
Well, actually, John, the original design of the whole water line system was to ultimately permit drinkable water to flow through the system. At the present time, we could certainly do that. However, the real problem is that we don't have a suitable water supply at this time. What was originally looked at was that we own a piece of land up on the top of Sweet Hill Road, and we had originally decided to put a water tank up there, a storage tank. And the situation would be that the water would flow from the new wells, from a series of wells possibly, up Sweet Hill Road to the tank. We store it in the tank, and then would flow back down Sweet Hill Road to cover the entire, or at least the major part of the center of town. However, I have done some calculations here, and the normal requirements, according to the National Fire Protection Association, for drinkable water per person is 140 gallons per day, with a maximum of 220 gallons per day and a peak usage of 315 gallons per day. Now when you calculate that out for approximately half of the town, or 4,000 people, that would be 1,260,000 gallons per day. So you see, we have to have a tremendous volume of water alone just to supply 4,000 people that I've calculated for here. The actual installation from the current water line into a house is relatively simple. What you'd have to do is tap into the mains and install a check valve, a shutoff, and then the meter to the house. And that would take care of it. However, I think that this whole business of drinking water is probably going to be put off sometime in the future.
Currently, that million gallons is being drawn out of the ground in a lot of different locations in town. And it's certainly something we will keep our eyes on, and this does provide us a backbone that we could use. But right now, we're concentrating on fire suppression.
That is correct.
We talked some about some of the plans we have for the future, and we have a map which we have drawn up, and that map has on it some of the possible loops that will be built in the future, provided the voters support the initiative that the Selectmen and the Budget Committee and the Capital Improvements Committee have all recommended. Now, there are a lot of different colors on that map. There's an orange loop, there's a blue loop, a green loop, and a red loop. And what I would like is, I was wondering, Don, if you could talk about the orange line. The orange line goes down, that's down near Shaw's. It goes up 121A or Main Street up to where the current line ends at Chadwick. And Don, could you tell us some about what this would accomplish and how this might be done?
Yes, we'd tie in at the Chadwick, where the line exists now, and we'll head down Main Street. And I've done some observation there, and we have 5 and 6 businesses in one little area right around the post office. Also, we have the library, the bank. Those are all important businesses. And also, every house owner, resident, will get a discount on their insurances, because we'll have hydrants all the way along 121A, all the way down right to almost the Havel line, and we're going to swing around and come out on the 125 and tie in at the line that already exists, and that will complete the loop. In case we get a break on the upper side, I can turn off valves and push the water down 121 or vice versa.
I'm going to ask Dick Latham if he would tell us a little bit more about looping and why looping is so important from a fire suppression standpoint, and so important. I mean, we're going to add a lot more people to having access to the hydrants, to better fire protection as we go down that South Main Street loop. But one of the key reasons we considered it was so that the line would then be a loop. And Dick, could you talk about loops for us?
John, I've had several people ask me about what a loop really is. Well, a loop is just what it is. It's basically an endless chain, if you will. What I've drawn here is an indication of, this is the reservoir currently. Now, this is only diagrammatic, of course, but this is the reservoir that we have down at the end of Maple Avenue. The water is taken from the reservoir through the pump and pumped through the line. Now, this is essentially the current situation that we have, where we have just a sort of a dead-ended line. Now, if the fire department has a fire, let's say over in this area, what they would do is they would hook up to this hydrant here, and they would extinguish the fire with the water coming out of here. Now, when you loop the system, I don't believe you can see this, it's not quite dark enough, but you would really basically extend the line from here, coming around and coming back to this hydrant where the dead end is currently. There are two advantages to looping the system. The first advantage is to the fire department, and that's concerning water flow. And just to give you a couple of for instances here, which these are not correct, they're just to give you a feel for what actually goes on. When you pump water through here, and the fire department is using, let's say, 1,000 gallons per minute out of here, you have a friction loss in the hose, or in the line, excuse me. And that friction loss would be approximately 5 gallons. So if they're trying to get 1,000 gallons out of here, due to the friction loss, they will only get 20 gallons per minute less. Now, when you have the loop up here, what happens is that, in theory, you have 500 gallons flowing through this section, and you have 500 gallons flowing through the second section. And of course, this is all coming from the same reservoir and the same pump. So when you look at the friction loss, 500 gallons flowing through here is about 2 gallons of loss per minute. Likewise, you have 500 gallons flowing through here, and that also would be about 2 gallons per minute loss of flow. So you can see that this hydrant would be much more effective and efficient if it were looped. Now, you may say this really is insignificant. However, probably if we had any sizable fire, the fire department would hook up to more than one hydrant. So let's assume that they hooked up to 3 hydrants off on this loop. You could understand what a tremendous advantage having the looping system would be. Now, the second advantage is that let's assume that some night someone comes along and they take their automobile and destroy this hydrant. And it's destroyed underground, so we have a leak here. Now, what we can do is we can take the gate valves that are in the line, in the ground, we can shut it off here, and we can shut it off here. So this portion is isolated, and the rest of the line is fed by the other way. So we only have this loss of line. The other way is that if we do not have a loop system and we have a break in the line here, everything from here on down is lost. And those are the two reasons basically that you would loop a system.
So it's a critical matter to improve water flow, and it's also important in case there were a break in the line that there be a second path by which the water could go so that the entire length of the line would not be useless in the case of a fire. Dick, now can you maybe show us on the original map that we were looking at in which we were showing the various lines, to go back to the orange line and show how a loop would work there, and then maybe start telling us about the blue line.
Well, here we have the water line to complete the orange line. We have the water source coming in here, and of course now it can only go this way here, which is across through the 125 and then down to Shaw's Plaza. By completing the loop here, you can see that the water would come in here and could flow in either direction. And this relates back to what I just originally had said about the water flow. We have many hydrants along here, and these hydrants would certainly have a tremendous advantage in flow for the fire department if the whole system were looped. So that it pretty much would take care of one loop here. Now, when it comes to this loop here, this actually is shown extending from the Kingston line, essentially, down over the Kingston, from Arbor Way, not from Kingston Line, from Arbor Way. There's a hydrant at the end of Arbor Way right now. We're in a process probably of negotiating with the state so that we can, when they construct the new bridge over the railroad pass on Kingston Road, then now is the time to put the pipe under there. Certainly, it's a great deal less expensive when the Kingston Road Bridge is being constructed for us to just come in and burrow under the track and hook on here to Arbor Way. So we would come down through here, and this first stage would be to dead end at approximately where Norm Major's house is on Kingston Road. And of course, that would be a relatively inexpensive situation. I would think it's probably about 10% of what we would normally have to expend on that. Now we have another situation developing here, and that is that there is money put in the budget already for extending the sidewalks from the safety complex down to Main Street and beyond. So while the sidewalks are being installed, of course that's going to be excavated, and it would be certainly worthwhile and save us a great deal of money to complete from the safety complex down to Main Street. And that only leaves a short distance, which would actually be from Norm Major's house down to the safety complex. So this would then complete a loop. And as you can see, likewise, we can have the water flowing in both directions here. So with this completed and this completed, we would have essentially two looped systems. There'll be one system with two loops.
Now on that map, there are two additional loops. There's a green loop and a red loop, and I'm going to ask John McArdle to talk about those because this is something that would relate to future expansion for economic development, and as businesses move in and as we expand the water line, we can attract the higher quality development that Selectman Sherman talked about earlier. So I'm going to ask John maybe if he would talk about this, and Dick could maybe point out on the map as John discusses it.
Okay, the green line that we're talking about would effectively begin at Maple Ave, go north on Route 121A, up to Sanborn's Candies. Now, last year we had some significant reconstruction on that intersection, at which time they put sleeves under the ground there so that if we get the water up that way, then we can take that either across the road or north or south, I believe. Now, going from Sanborn's Candies, where the potential loop would stop, we get a hydrant up there. That's giving us the ability to bring water south towards the remaining part of the line that exists, or right down here towards Goodrow's is, or heading north up where there's a lot of potential commercial development, as well as some existing businesses that reside along that roadway right now as we speak. The potential for growth up there is significant, as anybody who drives up there will see. The other red line we have, I believe, right here, yeah, right where Dick is going now. The properties down there have been vacant. We're looking at the area of the old drive-in, Goodrow's Trailers. We've also got two gas stations along that area. We've got some lands for potential development along Jesse George Road and Old Road. That bringing water out in that area is going to significantly enhance the viability of somebody coming in to put in a business that is going to bring jobs and a tax base to the town.
Thank you, John. So far we've been talking about the current system, which was the yellow on the maps that we've been looking at, and what the current system has for capabilities. We've also talked about some of the future plans that we have, that over the next few years we would like to see the system have an appearance of these loops. A loop for the water system being able to go down Kingston Road or Elm Street or down the railroad track as it currently does. Another loop that would take us down South Main Street and provide added protection for the whole of 125 south of Kingston Road. And as we look forward to what is going to happen, it's going to cost some money. And I'm going to ask if Selectman Sherman would talk to us a little about how we're going to plan the funding for these projects.
Oh, yeah. There are three basic ways that we can fund the projects. One of them is through the private developers. We can negotiate with them to see if how much they would contribute to paying for the line. Sometimes that means that we would waive an annual fee, but that isn't always. And if we could swing back to the map, and if Dick could help me with the red section that we were talking about, our plan would be on the red section that is along 125, starting, as we've talked about, at Goodrose and going north all the way up, keep going up to where Kingston Road comes out. That section that is red, we would probably be looking for private developers to help with the funding of that. We are not expecting at this point that taxpayer money would be used to develop that section. Another source of funding that we might also use on that same red section is grants. There are federal grants that are available for potential economic development, and we're already looking into applying for a grant to cover expansion in that area. The third source of funds is taxpayer funds. And if we could go back to the map again, it's always helpful to look at the colors and remind us where we are on the maps. That expectation at this point is that we would use taxpayer funds to do the green section that Dick is on now, which is the Main Street section that goes from Sanborn's down to Maple Ave. We would also be looking at the blue section, which is the Kingston Road section. But as Dick mentioned, there are other opportunities there where we will get some savings. The state is already working on that area to do the Kingston Road Bridge. As he also mentioned, we're looking to put sidewalks into some of that area, so there would be some savings there. And then the last section that we would be looking at for to use taxpayer funds would be the orange section, starting at Chadwick and going down to Shaw's.
Thank you, John. We've looked at what the capital costs would be. I'm sure some of the viewers will have questions as to what the operational costs are. Who pays for the operational cost, and how is the system maintained? Who pays for it now just to operate the system?
The commercial and industrial sites that have sprinkler systems pay the operating costs of the water line. In this year's budget, there's approximately $19,000 of expenses for the water line, and that is covered by this income that is gained, as I said, from the sites that already have sprinkler systems. One related issue to that is that, and I need to refer to my notes to get this exactly correct, in 1993 the town received permission to build the people that have sprinkler systems on the water line. There was a little bit of a technical issue there, and so there is a warrant article that I would like to read to you that is going to clear up that housekeeping issue. I urge you to vote in favor of this warrant article. It's strictly a housekeeping issue to make sure that, that we reference the right RSA. It is Article P25, and I'll read it. To see if the town will vote to establish and ratify all previous acts of the municipality with regard to a municipal fire suppression water system pursuant to RSA 38:4, 2/3 majority is needed. In the intent, it says that that's just a housekeeping issue, just to make sure that we can continue to build those entities that are already on the water line.
Thank you, John. So the users are paying for the operational costs. We're looking for taxpayer funds, for federal funds, and for developer money to expand the system. I suppose the next question would be how much this might cost, and I'm going to ask Don if he would comment some. And while he talks, we may want to be looking at the map again and beginning perhaps with the orange loop as to what that would cost us.
Okay, the orange loop starts at Chadwick and goes down to the Haverhill line out to 125 where we'll hook in with Shaw's. And the cost of that roughly is going to be $410,000 plus engineering. Now we have the green loop, which is back up above Maple Ave there, and it goes all the way up to Sanborn Candy. That there is roughly $150,000. Construction of the portion of the blue line, which is over there, we're going to be coordinating that with the state as they go under and put the new bridge in there. That's roughly 85,000 plus engineering fees. The total of it, roughly $645,000.
Thank you, Don. On the red line, we estimate something around $50 a running foot. And as we indicate, that should be paid for by developers or commercial developers as they go along. Although the portion closest to Arbor Way, I have written to see if we can get a grant to do that, going up the red line from Arbor Way up Pat Way. If we can demonstrate that we can create jobs by someone moving into the vacant site that the sawmill was at, we may be able to get some funds to help extend the water line Pat Way and expand capability. Now, to raise this money, the Capital Improvements Plan came up with a suggested plan, and we now have a warrant article that begins to implement that plan, and I'm going to ask if Selectman Sherman would share with us that plan. I mean, the warrant article for that plan.
Thank you, John. Yes, I'll read the warrant article, and we'll talk some more later on about the costs and how the costs were developed. If I could read the warrant article. Article P10, shall the town vote to establish a capital reserve account pursuant to RSA Chapter 35 for engineering and construction of water lines, hydrants, pump station, and related equipment and expenses to provide water to the town for fire suppression, and name the Board of Selectmen as the agent to expend without further action of town meeting, and to vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $109,750 to the capital reserve account for the first year. This is recommended by the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee and is consistent with what was in the capital improvement plan. And the intent, the town has developed a multi-year plan for construction of water lines to provide for future expansion of the municipal water system that is currently providing water for fire suppression to parts of the town. This coordinates with state construction efforts on Route 125, Kingston Road, Danville Road, and municipal work on 121A. Businesses pay an annual fee to be connected to this line, and property owners close to hydrants save on their fire insurance.
Now, the Capital Improvements Committee spent a great deal of time. We went over the numbers that Don shared with us earlier, the approximately $700,000 that over the next 5 or 6 years would be spent to build out this system. And could you share with us why the $109,000 and why a capital reserve account?
Be glad to. The capital improvement plan considered the input from Don Sargent and Dick Latham, a very nice plan on what we should do for the future of the town. This has been an ongoing issue as it relates to budgeting in the town. The Budget Committee has asked for years, as various issues have come up related to the water line, well, what's the plan? And so we're pleased this year that we were able to put a plan together. As you've seen the map, funding was put into the capital improvement plan to cover the portions that I talked about, the 3 colors that I mentioned. What we did is we took those estimated costs over the next 7 years and divided them by 6 to come up with an annual cost of what we should put into a capital reserve account so that we can cover the costs of the water line as it comes up. It's important to note that this is a capital reserve account, so we're saving money. We're going to get interest on that money so that as plans appear, we can take advantage of them. We've already heard about tying the improvements of the water line into other projects, such as the Kingston Road Bridge, such as the possibility of the sidewalk project if that warrant article passes, and also a big one, which is the work that'll be done on Route 125. We can't guarantee what years each thing will be done because there are other agencies that we're kind of at the mercy, so we don't know exactly what year that work will be done on 125. But we feel that putting this amount of money, this year we're asking for $109,750, asking for that amount of money each year will allow us to build up a fund where we can take advantage of other projects as they come along.
Some of the money was was spent last year in designing the project on the Kingston Road Bridge. We have sometimes some of the money in the water department budget for engineering. But as we expend that money, we'll be able to have it in that interest-bearing account, as you said, and then as projects arise, they will be done. I'm going to ask if Chief McArdle would talk about, I mean, we don't know right now what roads will be done first, but maybe you can say what some of the relational projects are that will affect what line is done when.
Sure. Selectman Sherman has already alluded to most of those decision-making factors that we would use when we go to put additional water in the ground. Clearly, the Kingston Road Bridge activity is something that we have to grasp that opportunity now because it's going to save us money in the long run. The work we did up on 125 and 121A was another example how we were able to take the opportunity with the road being open and people being inconvenienced at once and not have to do that twice. Going along the southern part of Main Street, when they're going to, if we get the sidewalks approved to put in there, it only makes sense to have available the pipe and the resources to put the water line in the ground at that time and not have to impact people twice. We may not be able to complete a loop all at once, but what we'd like to do is to at least complete as much as we can up to a certain point, specifically crossing major roads or intersections. The 121A, 125 is an example. Another example is the foresight 10, 15 years ago when they did initial work on Route 125 down near Bradley's, when they put a sleeve under the ground there. That saved us a significant amount of heartache this past summer when the Kohl's store came into town, that we're able to use the pipe that was there to cut across 125, keep the road open, and yet bring that service to a new merchant in town. And another factor that we really don't have a lot of control of directly is development. Clearly the commercial entities in town can move quicker than the town can when it comes to providing money to come into town and put into business. We have to have available the money to buy the pipe, to buy the hydrants, to buy the valves, to put in the ground so that we can be online with those people when they're here and ready to come into town.
Yeah, you mentioned one of the projects that we did this summer, in which a developer came in. They wanted to renovate the Bradley store and put Kohl's in there. And as they were working on that project, we knew there was a line under the road. The interesting story about that is that their engineers couldn't find the line. And Chief Petzel and Don Garlington went down there, and Don Garlington took out his little copper rods and did his dousing, and it was right where he and Chief Petzel said it was when they finally dug in the right spot, despite them trying a number of different times where we told them we thought it was. They never seemed to be able to dig right where we said it was until we went down and marked it on the road and said right there. And it saved us digging across Route 125 to have that, and now we will have the income from having Demoulas and Kohl's on the water system. They will have the added protection, so that's a perfect example of planning ahead. We've put lines in other places in anticipation of future expansion. Now, one point I want to stress that we've passed over rather lightly as we were looking at the red line on that map up there is the fact that there is potential for development by large retailers and by office complexes. We have had a number of people come in that wanted to talk about that project, and as they come in, we've indicated that we're going to want water extended out along Route 125 at the developer's expense. It will help the developer, but it will also help us be able to complete that line. And we don't know exactly when or if that will be complete, but that's certainly something that we're looking forward to. All of these proposals were presented last summer, and I'm going to ask Selectman Sherman how these proposals have been received and how the various committees and groups have responded to what has been presented by Dick and by Don and by others.
Well, Dick and Don did their presentation, I think it was last summer, to the Board of Selectmen, and we received it eagerly. We were glad to see that somebody was putting together a plan related to the water line. It's been, as I mentioned before, it's been an item that's been discussed for many years, but there didn't seem to be a plan. Once the Board of Selectmen received it, we eagerly forwarded it to the Capital Improvement Committee so that they could include it for consideration, which they did in their capital improvement plan. I was quite surprised how eagerly it was received at that committee. Then a presentation was again made to the Board of Selectmen for consideration in the operating budget, or excuse me, as a warrant article to cover the first year expenses, as I mentioned, $109,750. Again, that was received very well by the Board of Selectmen. Then it went to the Budget Committee, and the Budget Committee approved the warrant article as well. I think the sentiment on all three of those boards was the fact that, great, we're finally getting a plan, something that we can see, something that we can present to the voters, we can explain to them the advantages, and let them decide if this is something that they want to approve to improve the town of Plaistow. I think there was some sentiment, as you've heard, there was an effort a while ago in this town to do this, and the ball kind of got dropped. And we're glad to pick it up and bring it to the voters so that they can consider if this is the kind of thing that they want to approve to make Plaistow a better place to live and to attract the economic development, but also for these fire suppression issues and potentially out in the future perhaps as a source of drinking water. So all three boards approved the article and are presenting it to the voters, and I hope that the voters consider this program and whatever other information that they have when they go to the polls next Tuesday.
I would also add the Planning Board received the CIP report. The CIP is the Capital Improvements Committee is a subcommittee of the Planning Board. The report was brought to the Planning Board. The Planning Board also accepted the proposal that was presented. So you have CIP, Planning Board, Budget Committee, and Board of Selectmen all behind this plan. Thinking about the benefits of the system, I'm going to ask if Dick Latham can comment on what the benefits will be for the community with what has been proposed.
Actually, this is really a win-win type of situation. As has been explained here before, the companies that would like to come in here will have to do some excavation. They'll have to make additional lanes into their property, and when they're doing that construction, they are willing to pay for a great portion of this because it will ultimately give them a much lower rate on their insurance. So we attract businesses, and actually we get very good income from these businesses. The fire department also will benefit because they will be able to have more water available in a much quicker time. Now, also, the people who are adjacent to the water line, that is the residences, they likewise will have their insurance rates lowered. So it's pretty much of a real super win-win situation.
Thank you. Before I go and ask for closing comments by each of the members of the panel, I would like to take a few moments and thank Henry Schmidt and Davina Schmidt and Ray Viglione for helping us here to be able to present this program and to have it broadcast over cable. Are there any closing thoughts? And I guess we'll start at, Dick, we'll start with your end.
Finally, I have plenty of closing thoughts, as a matter of fact. Water is the key ingredient to fighting fires. And actually, we have a plan that is going to present water to almost every commercial industrial facility in this town. I am confident that the fire department has sufficient resources to fight any fire that may occur in a residence. However, the businesses pose an entirely different matter. You know, businesses and commercial buildings do burn. Whether we like it or not, it's going to happen sometime, hopefully not in this town. But the lost income from a business that may produce $250,000 to $300,000 of revenue to the town is just something that we should really do everything we can to protect. It is the responsibility also of any municipality to provide fire protection for the companies that come in here as well as the residents. And I'm sure that once we get this water line completed, we will have that very well in order. The other expansion of the water line is really long overdue, and I'm very, very pleased to see that it's happening now, and I certainly would like to ask for your vote on this particular article. Thank you.
Don?
Yes, as Dick has mentioned and this board here tonight has mentioned, there is a lot of things that have been done, and a lot of consideration was taken in when we did it. On Main Street, they put in a new bridge over Pollard Brook. We have a sleeve there already in place, so if we go for 125. And as Chief McArdle said, there's a lot of talk about how fortunate this town can be by having this water line here, as their fire chiefs are really worried about their system and with expansion of the building and so forth, and they don't have a water line started. So I'd certainly appreciate if you people would vote for this. It's been a lot of hard work, and it's been a long time coming, and all the departments are working together, so I'd appreciate a vote.
Well, certainly we hope they'll support both the article for the capital reserve and the article to clarify the technical issue relating around the RSA. I'm going to ask Selectman Sherman, John, if you have any comments.
Well, I think we've presented to the voters, excuse me, a lot of good information here. If you will remember when you were looking at the map and heard Dick talk about the advantages of loops, you can see that our proposal for the water line is a series of loops. The part that I'm proud of as a member of the Board of Selectmen is that we have a plan that we can present to the voters, and we can explain the advantages of why we want to do this. One of the things that I wish was that we could tell you this year we're going to do this, this year we're going to do this, and this year we're going to do this, but it makes sense for us to take advantage of the opportunities as they come along. The work on the Kingston Road Bridge, the work along Route 125, the potential passing of the sidewalk improvements. We need to dovetail this plan with those other things, and we'll need to take advantage of those things economically, which is what we'll do. But what that means is we can't tell you exactly each year when things will be done. But we do want to be able to take advantage of the opportunities as they come up. So I think we've done a good job presenting to the voters the issues, the advantages, and I would also just finally direct people to our webpage, www.plaistow.com. There's a copy of the capital improvement plan there. And thank you.
Thank you. And for the next to last word, the Fire Chief, John McArdle.
I'll be brief. Thanks, John, Don, and Dick. I am predominantly the end user of any improvements to the water line, the fire department, as it stands right now for fire suppression. I think the plan that's been put together and proposed, although people may differ on what areas should be accomplished first, we want to be able to be reactive to those opportunities, as Selectman Sherman said. And there's the old adage that to make money, you have to spend money. In this case, if we spend the money on the water line to put it in the ground, it is going to bring into the town economic development that John Sherman has spoken to, that we are eventually going to benefit from in the long run. I'd also like to thank Paul Tumanowski of Chart Engineering, formerly Process Engineering. He put in quite a bit of time to update this map that we have here on a relatively short notice so that we could present this to you. So thanks to Paul and Ken Paul of Chart Engineering for helping us in this endeavor.
Thank you. Yes, we do thank Chart. Not only were they one of the founding members, they've been involved in a long time in supporting this. They also have reserve capacity that the town could use of about 300,000 gallons and an additional pump that can work in our system if we need to. I'd like to thank the members of the panel. I'd like to thank the Cable Committee and those who helped produce the show. And finally, for the last word, March 12th, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., make sure you get to Sawyer's Banquet facility to vote. Thank you, and have a good day.